Trump, we know you.
You're a racist through and through.
Donald Trump, we know you.
You're a racist through and through.
His principal line of attack in many of the states, the oil states like North Dakota, the oil states like South Dakota or Texas, was to attack Kamala Harris, to attack the Democrats for undermining the oil and gas industry. His slogan in many parts of America was that the oil under the ground is gold for all of us. No, the oil under the ground is a desperate, dangerous future for everyone, including Americans.
For A, putting the boot in, or B, putting the boot in. You're standing there living for the last 3 years, as well as astronomically. You can't get health care, you're in desperation. But Trump offers a good solution, doesn't he? Blame the migrants. Easy that.
If we have constant warfare being led by the Republicans in America, by the Tories here, that's not going to end just by electing Labour, just by electing the Democrats. But you can't just sit down and say things aren't going to change. You have to fight for it. I'm so glad to see about 50, 60, 70 people here already.
I'm an American, and I woke up heartbroken today. This wasn't the outcome that I was hoping for, and I just came into town for a coffee. I didn't come here specifically, and I've been listening to everybody speak, and I agree with what's being said, and that it's a scary time to be an American, and it's a scary time to be anywhere in the world. I have a degree in political science from a university in the U.S., and what we're taught is to oppose dictators.
It might feel like a dark day today, and it must feel even darker if you're in the United States. But if the environmental movement can unite together with the LGBT plus movement, with the anti-racist movement, with the movement for women's rights, with the movement and strikers in Boeing and all those corporations, then there is hope, because it is that unity that has won climate justice. That's that unity that has won equality. That is that unity that has won hope for the future. That's what we have to rely on, and by doing these protests here in the UK, by building our movements, we are speaking in solidarity with those movements over there. That's the force to stop Trump.
I've got no illusions Democrats, they're another party of the ruling class in America, but actually think about it. Which people voted for Donald? It was the racists, it was the sexists, it was the bigots, the people that don't care that he's a rapist, a liar, a criminal. These are the people that voted for Donald Trump, openly hostile to working class people. That's what he stood for, and he stood on, and that's why it's not the same to say that it doesn't make any difference about who wins. Actually, it makes a huge difference. And I think we have to win those arguments with our friends, our workmates, other people we know. We need to mobilise in bigger and bigger numbers. We need to be back here this weekend. So everyone needs to go away and think about how we can bring more people out into the streets this weekend. Because we need to make sure that Manchester says, fuck off to Trump, and make sure that we say fuck off to racism.
And that rhetoric has played well in North Dakota. That rhetoric has played well in Texas and other oil states, because it speaks to people who are fearful about the future, who are worried about their jobs and their conditions and their money. And he was able to turn the catastrophe of climate change into an economic crisis and an economic issue for ordinary people.
I think we've had a lot of good points so far, but the one I really want to hammer home is, what's it got to do with us? When I'm teaching at the moment, there's a struggle among my students to bring a pen into school, to afford school lunches, to afford the basics that they need. Are things going to get better with Trump as president? Obviously not. Bringing in tariffs that are going to increase prices on goods worldwide are not going to do any good to us here. But we get the same question over and over, would Harris be even better? Would Harris even be better on that? No, I don't think so. But things are getting worse regardless. You need to stand up and say something against that.
If you look at CEO pay versus worker pay over the last 50 years, as was mentioned since Reagan, it has ballooned. It used to be, I think, somewhere around 20 times worker pay. Now it's like 250 times. And that's what you're seeing in America, in my opinion.
There was thousands of us here last time when Trump won the election. Maybe it was shocked that he won in the first place. Maybe it's less shock that he's won twice now. But nonetheless, I think immediately he organised a Muslim ban. Within hours, the airports were full of protesters arguing against the Muslim ban that he tried to impose in America that was later deemed to be even illegal in the courts. And it wasn't long before women were on the streets protesting with the hats on in their thousands. And again, he will be attacking abortion rights, trans rights, and opening it up a whole new wave of racism in America.
But what is he promising on the environment? And here it gets really scary. When he was last in office, he took America out of the Paris Agreement. It was largely a symbolic gesture because the Paris Agreement means very little in many ways for the environment. But it's a frightening indication of where he wants to go. He wants to take America out of the UN framework on climate change. For most ordinary people, that's the body that holds COP conferences every year. Now, most environmentalists have few illusions in COP, but actually it will be a symbol that will inspire multinationals and oil corporations and CEOs around the world and climate deniers, and it will undermine action from below, and it will undermine those of us who are fighting for a sustainable future. Now, let's not have any illusions in the Democrats. After all, it was Obama who destroyed the climate talks back in Copenhagen. But Trump is consciously finding ways to embolden the fossil fuel capital that he represents.
We've begun the fight back. We need to keep going, we need to carry on, and we need to show people this is unacceptable and it has to stop. Stop with the demonization of trans people, stop with the demonization of refugees, and stop interfering with me just doing my job. I just want to go to work and educate young people. I don't need the government interfering in that. I know better than any politician how to educate the children in my care. We need to show that these interferences are not acceptable. It's not normal to hate other people. That's taught, and it comes from the very top. We need to show that that is not okay.
We do still have the filibuster in the Senate, so just because Trump has control of the White House and the legislative branch, they still need 60 votes in the Senate. So if anybody in the UK is not, familiar with our system, he doesn't just have carte blanche to go through, right? They're going to need some Democrat senators. Right now they have like 52, maybe it's 55, but they're not going to get past the filibuster. So that limits the damage.
I'm just going to say one thing. I'm not going to leave it to the filibuster. I'm not going to leave it to the 60 votes. Because we know just how much damage Trump did previously. Even without getting bills passed, the narrative that you can have with that platform is huge, and therefore it's so important that we have a counter narrative, and that's what today is about, and that's what the demonstration on Saturday will be about. So please, go away and build that. Talk to people about why it's so important that we need to be out on the streets, that we can't leave it to the establishment. They are responsible for Trump getting elected. We need to be people that fight back. So on 2 o'clock on Saturday, we will be back here. Please get the word out. And in the meantime,
what do we see happening? In America, they start attacking trans young people. What happens here? A couple of years later, the Tories pick it up and carry on with it. They see it as a wedge issue to divide us, to turn us against each other. We see the same thing happening over and over again in the States. They're implementing many, many laws in places like Florida to restrict what can even be taught to students, acknowledging the history of their own country. What do we see here? The exact same thing, but a few years later implemented by the Tories. Trying to make us not acknowledge the history of the British Empire and the effect on some of the people who live here today, being ignorant to the past.